I have returned, ladies and gentlemen and chairmen of the board. It's your boy, the Casual Josh. It's been a while since I last came to you, but I'm back, baby.
And I come back to you now, at the turn of the tide.
And if you already read the title of this video, you know we about to hop straight into Final Fantasy VII Remake review. So without further ado, let's get started. Alright, now before we dive straight into the review, guys, I would like to give a shout out to our sponsor, Raid Shadow Legend. Oh god, no. If only. Sadly, we don't have any sponsors yet for this channel, so we're gonna work to get there, my friends, believe that. So excuse my attempts at dry humor, but hey, if you didn't like it, sue me. Now enough of the funny business, let's dive into the review. But quick disclaimer real fast, everyone. Just a couple of things I need to say before I start the video. There is some footage I couldn't capture due to the fact that I don't have a capture card, and since I'm playing on PlayStation 4, there are some scenes that you just can't share. Namely, the entirety of Chapter 18. I really wanted to show off the boss fight and the cutscenes, but you know, since no capture card, I really can't do it. But now moving on to the review, we'll start with a rough synopsis of the story, so let's begin. So you play as Cloud Strife. Wait a second, that's not right. Hold on, friends. Okay, so here we go again. You play as Cloud Strife, a hired hand or merc working odd jobs across the city of Midgar. However, on one particular job, he's asked by his childhood friend and #1 waifu, you can fight me on this, Tifa Lockhart, to help her colleagues, friends, teammates, well, we'll go with crew. She asks Cloud to assist her crew in destroying one of Shinra's Mako reactors, which is their universe's version of energy. And Shinra is just an evil corporation like Umbrella, that's it. So after committing their act of environmental terrorism, the crew kind of find themselves being hunted down by Shinra, and thus that starts the journey of our heroes, unless you count Crisis Core. But that's a story for another time. But quick second, guys, I cannot be the only one who question the actions of our heroes. Now, granted, it's technically Shinra's fault for the Mako reactor going haywire. However, our heroes don't know that, and when they get above ground, they kind of have a meh reaction like,
"It ain't pretty, but we can't stop now. This was just the first reactor."
and I'm like, the least y'all can do is find a better way to do this without, you know, destroying half the city. I guess I'm just a big softy, but hey, that's just me. I wouldn't want to cause that much damage, you know. Just go in, get the initial target, and get out. Before I go any further, because I forgot to add this little part, the game does start you off with 3 game modes: classic mode, easy mode, and normal mode, with the exception of hard mode. However, you would have to beat one of the 3 game modes first to even unlock it. But pretty much classic mode, your character is in auto attack. The only thing you as the player can do is issue commands when the ATB gauge fills up. In easy and normal mode, you know, just a step above a difficulty, that's it. And lastly, hard mode, you're not able to use any items, and the MP you use during the chapter stays reduced unless you find MP shards in one of the boxes or use Air of Soul Drain. But those are just 2 of the ways. You still have some of your sword abilities and stuff, but I'll get into that later. But as a bonus, your MP does get restored at the beginning of each chapter in hard mode, so that's a win. Now that I have that out the way, I would like to talk about some of the game mechanics now. Oh boy, overall the game mechanics were pretty good. That said, I did have just minor issues, or you could say a couple of nitpicks with the game mechanics. Firstly, combat. Now, I still stand by my statement that it's odd that characters can't jump willingly, but that doesn't affect the gameplay at all. That's just something I find odd still to this day, so don't take that too seriously. The real-time combat is another plus for the game. Me personally, I enjoyed the freedom of just moving my character around. Not that that's anything new, and generally I like the open commands menu in the game, which basically in battle slows down time to give you enough time to think of a strategy or whatever you gotta do to make a move. And honestly, I thought this mechanic would get annoying after a little while, but I can't count how many times this little mechanic saved my life, especially during the Hell House fight, even though I lost that thing about 8 times during hard mode. The game also allows you the option to switch between characters that are in your party, and even issue commands to characters if they have a bar of their ATB gauge filled.
Also, each character has their own unique ability designed for them. One ability is their own unique ability by pressing triangle and they'll perform that said ability. For example, Aerith has her magical charge ability, which I highly recommend you abuse on staggered enemies and stationary enemies who don't have a lot of mobility. And their second abilities, or what I like to call their second abilities, are acquired by getting proficient with a character's weapon. Each character weapon has its own ability, and once you max out proficiency with said weapon, you are able to carry out that ability to the next weapon and so on and so forth. Now earlier I was speaking of an ATB gauge. To put it simply, it's 2 bars that fill up as you're attacking the enemy, and as one bar or both bars fill up, you're able to issue commands, either to your teammates or yourself. And those commands can range from the abilities I was talking about earlier or spells. But keep in mind, some abilities require both ATB gauges, so proceed with caution. And just as a side note, there are some materia that you can use as abilities instead of spells, so it won't take up any MP, which helps if you're playing in hard mode. Trust me. Now, real talk, I know I'm praising the battle system, and as much as I am, I truly only had 3 major issues, and this really isn't even concerning the battle system, well, except for one. It's more when I encountered enemies specifically in chapters 11 and 12. And the other 2 issues are the aerial combat and the AI companionship. So starting with chapter 11 and 12, whilst I was going through the train graveyard, whenever I encountered enemies, they had a nasty habit of getting stuck on the train. Now normally this really wouldn't be a big issue, however since the environments are interactive, I had no choice but to fight. Now I did try fleeing a couple of times, but again I couldn't do that since, you know, the enemies would have to be defeated for me to move on. And on top of that, sometimes the game would crash when they got stuck on the train. Now it hasn't happened again since I started replaying the game to get all my footage, but I thought this was just some kind of weird game glitch. But let me know if any of you had any problems like that. So now discussing my second issue, which is the aerial combat. If you didn't have Aerith or Barret on your team fighting, then aerial combat was indeed asinine. I mean, they fly away to charge up their attack while you're in the middle of your combo, which now you can't finish, and would have to restart. Even though I'm using chapter 12 as an example when Cloud is ascending the tower to stop Shimmer and the Turks, when I encountered some of the enemies, they would just fly off the platform and just stay out of my hit range, in which case I would have to use magic, which took up valuable MP. Now I just want to clarify, chapter 12 wasn't the only chapter I encountered the aerial combat issue. It happened throughout the entire game, in which I got used to it, and again during some of those chapters I had Barret and or Aerith with me, so it was a bit more bearable and the aerial combat didn't bother me then. Lastly, for my major issue, which is now the AI companions in your party. I don't know who at Square programmed the AI for your partners, but we need to have an intense conversation as to why my comrades wish for death. So what I mean by this is, let's say I'm in a boss fight, because this is where this situation usually arises at, but I'm in the boss fight, boss charges up a blast that you can clearly dodge, but instead, what do my party members do? They stand there and take the hit, or they run straight into it. Like what? Come on, Sway! This is some bullshit! Alright, now where was I? Oh yeah, AI being AI. Like, I'll be honest, I don't know why they took the hit instead of just getting out the way. For example, going back to chapter 12, during the boss fight between Reno and Rude, the first phase of the fight, Rude is in a helicopter and he has this, I guess, aerial bomb raid attack. And mind you, this attack is in a straight line, and the battle arena for the fight is big enough to get out of the way. Also, the explosion range for the bombs isn't that wide either. But tell me why, in God's name, do they stand there in a straight line where the bombs drop? Like, I'm not even kidding. They just stand there awaiting for the bombs to drop. Granted, they do block, but why are they blocking instead of, I don't know, getting out of the way? Another instance is where I was fighting the Hell House in chapter 9 and it used Chair Salvo Deluxe, and instead of dodging the ice chair that does incredible amounts of damage, they stand there and block it, which in hard mode doesn't help. Again, I don't know why this is the case with the AI, and it did hinder some gameplay against the bosses. My only hope is that in part 2, the AI companionship will be fixed. So how do I feel about Final Fantasy VII Remake? Overall, the game was great. And I mean, not the, okay, yeah, it's just great kind of thing. I mean, Square Enix did a phenomenal job with constructing the remake, and granted, they had plans to remake this game since way back in the PlayStation 2 era, or I think it was the PlayStation 3 era of games. But believe me when I say I'm glad the PS4 remake was worth the wait. There were some pretty tough moments in the game. It was especially hard to keep it together during Chapter 12. I already knew what was going to happen and you couldn't stop it, but I wish there was an alternate route to which you could stop what was going to happen. Unfortunately, when Aerith, the most optimistic character in the group next to Jessie, says we won't be able to stop it, or really she just says it with her facial expression, it kind of just solidified that there is no avoiding the plate from dropping no matter what you do. But I mean, just seeing some of the citizens and Avalanche fight off Shinra and the Turks in what I would like to call Sector 7's last stand was too much, because you could see their desperation of trying to stop the plate from dropping, but to no avail. Then there was the aftermath after the plate dropped. I didn't realize, or rather it didn't strike me until I looked up, that damn, these fools really just dropped an entire section of a city just to kill Avalanche. And they only succeeded in killing one member along with countless civilians. However, even with all that loss, I just love how in Chapter 15, it's like the crew got themselves together and was just like, no more, we're gonna go get Aerith back and we're gonna go beat down Shinra along the way. And the chapter itself, perfectly titled The Day Midgar Stood Still, accompanied by a beautiful triumphant score, and I'm sorry I'm about to butcher these names, but the scores are by Nobu Umatsu, Masashi Hamazu, and Mitsuto Suzuki. And the score by those three capitalizes, which to me is one of the most powerful moments in this game. Even though I just somewhat mentioned it, the music in this game was just too incredible. Like, I thought my favorite theme would be the Valkyrie boss theme, but then I started to alternate between the Rebirth theme for the Arbiters of Fate and Sephiroth's theme, and quite frankly, there's so many more. And not just about music, with the extraordinary cast of characters and the voice talent behind them, everything just melds together in the game, and personally, Final Fantasy VII Remake deserves high marks. My hope now for the future of Final Fantasy Remake Part 2 is the issues I addressed earlier in the video to somehow get fixed or tweaked, because I don't want to go through another playthrough with my party doing very dumb things. And speaking of Part 2, I'm honestly curious as to see where the story is going to go now, since now what I am assuming is two timelines are taking place, one where Zack lives and the other where he's dead. I wonder how it will play out. I'm just hoping we don't have to see him die again unceremoniously, because Zack really did deserve better, let's be real here guys. And I'm pretty sure these issues will be addressed in Final Fantasy VII Part 2 Remake, but the problem is how long we'll have to wait to see these changes, or rather the game. Because currently Square Enix is working on Final Fantasy 16 and whatever Project Athea is. And as of the making of this video, Square Enix released a plethora of trailers during PlayStation's State of Play, and those trailers included Final Fantasy VII Intergrade with the Yuffie episode, which is kind of funny because I was going to talk about the lack of DLC in Final Fantasy VII Remake, but now I had to take it out because we got DLC now. And on top of that, they introduced the rumored leaks, which are Final Fantasy The First Soldier, which will be a multiplayer mobile game. Then we have Final Fantasy Ever Crisis, which will also be a mobile game. And the rest I assume will be mobile games, but the games will be Final Fantasy Advent Children, Before Crisis Final Fantasy VII, Crisis Core Final Fantasy VII, and Dirge of Cerberus. So yeah, that's a lot of backlog to get through. With that being said, I'm guessing we won't see anything for Remake Part 2, or at least anything trailer-wise, until maybe the end of this year, or the middle of next year. I also wouldn't expect any gameplay anytime soon either, because we have to keep in mind guys, that Final Fantasy VII Remake was announced all the way back in 2015. But we didn't get the game until 2020, a whole 5 years. But hey, on the bright side, it's better than waiting for 10 years. But that's all I have for you guys today. I do plan on doing a part 2 when Intergrade comes out, because I will have my 5 by then. And also I know I'm leaving out a lot of stuff, namely characters. But just real quick, if you made it this far in the video, I want to thank everyone who watched my first full review of a game. I'll be honest with you, I wasn't really feeling confident doing this at all. I truly doubted myself while working on this, but gradually throughout the process of working on the video, I found I was getting more relaxed and
gaining more confidence as I was working through it. So again, thank you guys so much for coming to my small little corner of YouTube to check out my video. It truly does mean a lot to me. And with that being said, is there anything I might have missed, something you disagree with? Let's discuss in the comment section below. And also, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe, and I'll see you guys next video. Everyone stay safe and be frosty. Later.